in the Western region. Would you describe it as the heart of Ghana cocoa growing country?
Well, certainly Asaase, very close to Asaase Kropon. That is my hometown, and it's a typical cocoa farming community. My parents and then my grandparents, great-grandparents were all involved in cocoa cultivation. So I was born and bred in that enterprise, and I grew in it, matured in it, and I've lived with it ever since. So cocoa, more or less, has become part of my DNA.
I was going to say, in the way that people describe cocoa as being the lifeblood of Ghana's economy, cocoa is in your bloodstream, really. You've known it since your earliest days. And apparently you also spent some time in Zimaland. How did that happen? What came about there?
In Zimaland, because, my father at some point was working with the State Construction Corporation. And because of that, as a staff of that corporation, he used to travel around the countryside. So in the 60s up to the 70s, we happened to be in the Zima area where he was working for that corporation. So I stayed in Asaase. My primary school was in Asaase, and then also at Mpataba, but finally in 1966, after Kwame Nkrumah School, eventually settled back home at Asaase.
How did you handle the disruption? I mean, presumably it was a change of language as well as a change of environment.
Language, I don't know. When I was young, I know I could speak Zima fluently. But over time, I forgot everything.
Oh.
Of course, even when I became minister for the region and I used to travel to the Zima area, anytime, people started speaking in Zima, I could pick some of the words, except that I find it difficult to actually speak it myself. Yes, but when you speak, if you're not careful, you might think that you don't understand anything. I will understand, pick a number of words, except that I cannot speak the Nzima language now.
Fascinating stuff. So you talked about starting your primary school in Asaase. Did the Catholic Church play a role in that?
Exactly, because my parents are Catholics, and as Catholics, of course, in those days we had Catholic mission schools. So I attended the Roman Catholic mission school at Asaase. But then when we settled back home at Asaase, we did not have any Roman Catholic school. There it was Methodist. So in the early 60s, the missions, that was the Christian missions, even at some point the Islamic, mission, they all played a very important role in our educational system. So at the basic level, what we call the early primary school, I first started at the Catholic and then came to the Methodist, primary, before eventually entering, in those days, what we call the middle school. Yes.
So what were the mission schools like in a rural part of Ghana, a rural part of the Western region in those days? I mean, roughly how many students were there in your class, for example?
In those days, in my class, maximum of about 30 pupils. But the discipline was there. For instance, I quite remember, even at that tender age, I quite remember that every morning you have to go for mass. And we had a card that as you enter the church, you drop the card there, your name is there. And then your teachers will come and pick the cards, and then at parade in the morning, they will, cover the cards. So that if you haven't dropped your card in the box in the church that morning, it means you do not attend mass, and you'll be cleaned.
I was just going to say, what was the payback? Immediately.
You'll be cleaned, So there was a lot of discipline. And it worked for some of us. It's sort of inculcated into us that moral principles, and some of us have lived with them up to this age.
And you talked about the importance of the various churches and indeed Muslim missionary societies, if you like, opening up educational provision in that part of Ghana at the time. This was one of the parts of the country that contributes a great deal to the country's economy. Was there no state provision, or was it that the state educational provision at the time was not very good?
Not exactly so, but I think it was quite complementary, because the state alone, the government alone, cannot, shoulder the entire responsibility. So whereby you have other, stakeholders, pattern governments, I think it works. And therefore, I want to also support. There have been calls coming from some of these, missions that, we should revisit those days and then allow, some of these missions to take up some of our educational. I think it's in the right direction, especially the basic level. That is the foundation. If the foundation is right, whatever structure you put on top will stand. If morals are decaying at the base level, then you don't expect to have good products at the top. So personally, I believe that the missions must be brought in to play some role in our educational system, especially at the foundation level, at the basic level. Because it appears to be some moral decadence.
Indeed. There are many who would agree with you. Perhaps a subject we can revisit later on in our discussion in relation to the uses of chocolate, about which the least said the better. But moving on from there, you went to the University of Ghana in Legon to study geography, and apparently you had a very prominent mentor there, Professor Bene, I believe.
Yes.
He decided to take you as a mentee. At what stage in your studies was that, and what do you think he saw in you?
My great professor passed on just last Thursday, and today I was at the house. I see him not just as my professor, he's my mentor, he's my father, he's my friend, he's my everything. And, I got to know him in 1982, after the 81 coup. He was a minister in the Liman administration, and immediately after the coup, he returned to campus to teach. And that's when I saw him. But we weren't so close until after we finished, and then I decided to go to my hometown to teach. I've been elected to served as a teaching assistant at Legon. But then we also had a secondary school at Wasekropong, the capital. That time it wasn't, it was a traditional capital, which had a school that was very deprived. No water, no electricity, the buildings were wooden buildings, so no graduate, tutor was prepared to go and teach there. Only 6 formers and, certificate A, trained teachers were going there. So, in filling my national service form, I indicated that unless I was posted there, I was also not prepared to go anywhere.
Your own revolutionary statement.
Wow. I wanted to go and serve, my community. And eventually, and I got to know this when, from 81 after the coup, after running school, we were forced to go and carry cocoa.
Yes.
We were in the final year. So from January up to April, we were in the field carrying cocoa. And that's when I got to know that the school was so deprived, even without a graduate tutor. The only graduate tutor there being the headmaster. And he was a literature, person. But then the school was not offering literature. So literally, there was no graduate teaching at the place. So I decided to go and help. And I was there when those days, it was difficult even to communicate. Phones were not, mobile phones are not occurred.
They didn't.
And even telephones. Oh. So you had to send somebody, by road to drop me a note that they've actually chosen me to, serve as a teaching assistant, at the geography department. I declined.
You declined because you were so determined to serve.
I was so determined, because when I saw the situation of my younger brothers and sisters there, I was so touched that I felt I owe it a duty to do something about that.
Now, some would say that's extraordinary because most people doing national service at that time would have been seeking, if anything, to wriggle out of their commitments as far as possible. And there you are actually rising to national service, actually choosing possibly the most difficult placement that you can for yourself out of love for the people from whom you came, or determination to make a difference as far as you could. Can you describe also the atmosphere of the time? Because not everybody will understand the reference you made earlier on to students going to haul cocoa after the 31st December 1981 revolution. Can you explain to listeners what that meant?
After the coup, it was gathered that a lot of cocoa had been locked up in the countryside. They could not be evacuated because bridges had broken down, the roads were bad, and the military regime that needed the cocoa so badly at the port for export to earn, income for the country. So students were taxed, and we were then, final year students, and almost every tertiary student at the time was asked and directed to go and carry cocoa. That's what we call the task force. So we all went. And for the first 3 months, we were carrying cocoa, bringing it to the roadside for tractors to also send to the nearest depots for articulated trucks to convey them to Takwa Depot and that kind of thing.
This is literally carrying the cocoa on your
loaded,
backs.
Yes.
Yeah.
So
from the farms which were inaccessible.
No, that's from the buying center, what we call society level. Okay. Because the trucks could not get there. Only tractors could go there. So we had to go and load onto tractors for the tractors to move them to a more convenient points where these trucks can also pick them, and then take them to articulated trucks, which will then convey or transport to Takoradi. And from January up to April, that's what we were doing. Until we also complained that no, we needed to complete our, academic course. So there was some agitation, especially amongst the final year students at that time. And then we were called to come and then finish our academic work. So all of us at that time, instead of writing our exams in June, July, which is normally the practice in Ghana, we wrote our exams somewhere in September 82. And, so I, immediately after the exams, had seen the situation of the school. We were carrying the cocoa. So I decided to go and work there. So immediately I went to the school voluntarily. Then went to the National Service Secretariat in Takoradi to effect my transfer to the school. So when the university actually appointed me as a teacher, I've already, I've already invited myself elsewhere. And tried as my professor did, I've not come. I still there. Of course, we were two. And the offer at that time carried a scholarship to Canada for to go and do a master's after the teaching assistantship. But I declined everything and then went to serve my people for 2 years. But I think all these were God's own design.
It must have deepened your cocoa experience, I think, to a lot of other people who went through that experience of hauling cocoa in the years when Ghana's cocoa economy was about to grind to a halt. It's a period they might remember with some nostalgia for the camaraderie, but mostly with pain for the conditions in which they had to live and carry out that job, that national service. For you, it's all part of a bigger cocoa story.
Exactly.
But then you returned to Legon, was it, to do your MPhil?
MPhil, yes.
Right, and again, Professor Bennett continued to be your mentor at that time.
Now let me tell you something. Once I was there, then he sent a note to me again. In more cases, he had to send somebody by road, passenger car, to come and drop a note to me. Because he saw in me some qualities that he needed at the faculty. So he sent a note to me that he was doing some work for FAO.
The Food and Agriculture Organization. And
he wanted me to do the field work for him. So
what were the qualities he saw in you?
It was all, after the coup, he lectured in rural resource development, and that was my area. But I specialized in rural resource development, and that was also his field. So maybe from in the lecture room, I think he identified me and saw some qualities in me. So he was pressing and chasing me fervently.
Yes.
So I was there, and then he dropped this note that, Edu, I want you to assist me as a special assistant, a research assistant in so and so work. Are you prepared to do, I want to apply and so and so. So I also sent a reply that yes, I was prepared. Then he sent me the concept, note and then everything. Then, I assisted in developing the questionnaire, sent it back to him, and when he agreed upon it, he sent it back to me to administer. And I administered everything in the film, and that was how my research career started.
Right.
So I went to the field and administered everything, collected data,
So this was a research project aimed at cocoa farmers in that particular part?
It was specifically about land tenure and then, land use in the cocoa area, or the Wasakopon as a case study. And after we've done that one, he developed more interest in me and wanted me back on campus.
In a way, you're the perfect candidate. You come from the right part of the country, you speak the languages, you're completely at home, cocoa is in your blood, you have this doggedness and this persistence, and you're not afraid, having gone to Accra and lived the big city life, you're not afraid of re-immersing yourself in that rural environment from which he needed the information for his work from the FAO, and he saw in you possibly a mini-me, a younger version of himself with the same research interests. So it was a beautiful coincidence there, you'd say, that of meeting. So indeed, you've gone on to write about land tenure and the management of land. There's one of your key publications with K. Utsuku, J.B. Edu, and others is Land Tenure and the Management of the Land. Kajero
Tsuka is a Japanese.
Kajero. Yeah, so you just have the letter, the initial. Okay. Kajero Tsuka and J.B. Edu yourself and others. Land Tenure and the Management of Land Trees, the case of customary land tenure areas of Ghana. So having done that research project, you kind of had a sense, obviously, of where your interests lay. But did you consciously, in your own mind, link what you were doing as an academic interest with your background and something palpable that you could do as work in the future?
In fact, the academic pursuit, was my main focus. I wanted to solve certain questions, conceptualize some events at the cocoa frontier, and then try and answer them myself. Because from that FAO research with Prof, I was open to so many issues confronting the industry. And I thought, I should be one of the instruments to solve some of these problems. So eventually, I came back on campus for my MPhil, and I was so happy that I'd come. But then I lost my scholarship to Canada, and he was happy that I'd come. I was a teaching assistant at the department, then also a special research assigned to him. So immediately we started a major research for the World Bank. For the World Bank, it was in nature, land tenure. The World Bank wanted to understand the land tenure system in Ghana. Today, we didn't understand why government could not take over all lands in Ghana, to make acquisition and allocation of land easier for everybody. So again, I was the first, assistant to Prof in that work. And we did a very marvelous work, very excellent work at that time. We had a number of publications, but I was more or less in the field. And that project was not only done in the Western region, we also did part in Ashanti and then part in the Volta region. And Prof. George Bele, he was in charge of Western region. Then we had Professor Emisa. He was the head of Land Administration Research Center, KNUST. And then we had Dr. Achu. He was with SEC. Legon.
Institute for Statistical and Social
Research, yes, Legon. And he was for Volta region. So the three professors were working at different regions. And then after we finished, I was crisscrossing Ashanti and then Western, with the field work. And that's how I even improved upon my field work and then research experience. By the time we finished, there was nothing I didn't know about research. So it went very well. And Professor Nisa then saw what I was doing at Legon and then started pushing me to KNUST.
That's how you ended up at KNUST, which I...
Here are 30 things you never knew about cocoa.
Did you know that of all foods known, cocoa has the highest antioxidant polyphenol content and provides the greatest cardioprotection? Eating and drinking natural cocoa products increases the flow of blood to the heart. Cocoa contains magnesium, which helps to improve the elasticity of blood vessels, lowers LDL cholesterol levels, maintains good blood pressure, and protects you against stroke and heart disease. 30 Things You Never Knew About Cocoa is brought to you in association with the Know Your Cocoa Foundation. Stay tuned to Asaase Radio 99.5 for more fascinating cocoa facts and figures.
Of course, we're all here, we're enjoying what is officially National Chocolate Day.
Chocolate Day, yes.
Chocolate Day, Ghana Chocolate Day. And indeed, you brought some beautiful examples. I hope
Exactly.
you can show them to the camera if you can just see. This beautiful golden tree gift box with all the different flavors, orange, Ikwafu, and I can see some King's Bite, my favorite in there. You're doing beautiful things to promote cocoa consumption, and it isn't all sweet chocolates, as there are in this box over here. There's Cocoa Royal Powder, which is a dark, bitter chocolate. I think you may have some drinking chocolate there.
Yeah,
there's Mansa Gold over there, which is a dark chocolate, which are very health-giving. They improve circulation. They're good for your hormonal levels. They're good for all sorts of things. They improve your skin, your hair. So you're trying to encourage consumption of cocoa in Ghana, and those of us who are chocolate lovers are never going to say no to this, Valentine's Day or no Valentine's Day. But there's some people who are very critical of the change of focus that has come about, because essentially the structure of Cocoa Pod is about buying cocoa beans, checking the quality, aggregating them, and sending them to export to produce a large amount of foreign exchange for Ghana. It is a huge contributor.
That is not all. Our law says that you must also promote processing.
And you're promoting processing of cocoa, and we have got up to 40% processing of the cocoa the total volume that we produce, the total crop, aiming for 50%, I believe, in the current year. It's another of the achievements of Cocoa Pod under your guidance. But there are people who are critical of, if you like, things such as Ghana Chocolate Week and the campaign, because the argument is some things like this, campaigns of this sort, they're wonderful, we enjoy them here, but what effect do they have on the global trade? And ultimately the thing about who determines the price of cocoa. They don't have any impact. That's the argument. What's your response?
In fact, I think we must take the conversation right from here. We must start it, from our own backyard. Because for the longest while, chocolate has been consumed in Europe, and then later in America. Now, the focus is switching to Asia. And when you look at the entire historical antecedents, you come to appreciate why this has been so. Now, currently, consumption of chocolate is flat in Europe. It's more or less stagnant. It's also stagnant in America. Now, in Europe, if you look at the demographic structure, the median age is 41. And once you have a median age of 41, it means you have so many people who are 50, 60, 70 years in Europe. You have
it's an aging population.
It's an aging population. Now, with that aging population, everybody is very conscious about sugar. When you talk about chocolate, there are 3 key ingredients there. Your cocoa, your sugar, and then your milk. There's a cocoa. The cocoa that will give you all the health benefits. The milk will give you some nutritional benefits, and then to some extent some, because with the milk you may have some calcium and so on and so on. But if you want to really get the benefits, you get it from cocoa. And when you talk about chocolate, the less cocoa in it, the less it is chocolate. The more cocoa in it, the better the chocolate. So if you have 100% cocoa as food, then it means it is real chocolate. I would say that's pure chocolate. If you load it with anything, you can load it with sugar, milk, and so that eventually you have, let's see, 7% of cocoa in it, as is happening in Europe and all these places. Even though they call it chocolate, I will not call it chocolate.
As chocolate.
It's not because you know the content of chocolate have been severely diluted. You know, so that's the essence. Now, today, manufacturers are even adding something else. What do you call cocoa butter equivalents?
Artificial cocoa butter.
Palm oil, because it's cheap. It's far, it's cheaper to use palm oil than to use cocoa. So they drop just a small drop of cocoa content, and then they have palm oil, and people are taking it. You know, paying the same price, making even cocoa to become very expensive, shortchanging the consumer. And these are the things we are fighting. We think it's wrong. But we must start the conversation here because cocoa has a lot of nutritional health benefits. Once you are taking it, it means government, families are even going to save a lot from medicines and going to hospital. You won't believe it. The past 20 years, I've never had malaria. 20 years, I sit in mosquitoes, I sleep in mosquitoes. But because I'm taking my cocoa, and I don't take it casually, I take it religiously.
As a medicine.
You know. I take it, apart from water. Maybe the cocoa is competing in my system with water. Just as I take water, I do same for cocoa. Because when you read about cocoa, it's said that water is health and life. And apart from water, as for oxygen, it gets into the body naturally. Apart from water, the next thing which should enter the human body as food should be cocoa. So take your chocolate. I said that once I've been saying that once you are 40 years plus, watch sugar. Because after 40 years, some of us, for instance, when you're going to sit in your car, somebody comes to open the door, and then you go and sit there. When you're getting down, he opens for you. You walk very little into your office. You sit there the whole day, no locomotion, and so on and so forth. And then you go and sit there for, the sugar will kill you. But if you are burning sugar, of course, take your chocolate. And then the cocoa itself, Professor Adai, University of Ghana, Medical School, that's Kolebu, is a professor of anatomy. He will tell you that the kind of compounds that we have in cocoa, very little had even been said about it so far. And it sort of deals with every human problem, that's health problem.
And
for the young,
of the human
for the, from the infancy, the young, and then the aged, particularly for the aged, all the killer diseases And they've written a lot about that. So if that's the case, if you have issues like diabetes, like cancer,
Heart disease,
cardiovascular diseases, bone problems and all that, if cocoa can address all these problems, then why don't we start the intake here? So what the Cocoa Board is doing is just to do the generic promotion. Because we believe that if we do the generic promotion here, charity begins at home. So if we are doing and so then we must start here. We must let our people take cocoa. Now, Nobel Prize winners, science category in the world, they've all come from places where chocolate is eaten most.
That is one of the 30 things that you never knew about cocoa, but I have discovered recently. And indeed, I hope listeners to Asaase Radio will be hearing more of these amazing facts. Yes, it is a fact that the high chocolate consuming countries have produced more Nobel Prize winners.
Science category.
Science category.
Science category.
Okay, well, I have slightly different feelings about that, but we won't go there. Not being an arts person, but if I could return to the business of, if you like, Cocoa Board and its influence in the world, just before we end the program, I think it'd be quite good to give listeners an impression of that. There are also people who, quite apart from criticisms of things like campaigns to promote domestic consumption, criticize Cocoa Board as essentially a colonial institution. You were established in 1947, and as I said, you exist as an institution to aggregate beans and export them to the outside world, which seems somewhat at odds with what you're describing about, but you, as you say, part of your brief is also to process cocoa before export, and we're trying to increase that. Processing to what extent is a separate question, but I wanted to ask you personally, under your tenure as Chief Executive of Cocoa Board, how far you think you have been able to move the institution away from that, what some people describe as the colonial model, and redirect it so that it is more focused on achieving finished products, whether for export or domestic consumption.
Okay, and that's why we are doing all these promotional activities, calling for more processing and so on and so forth. We want to see more processing, and we even are challenging the science community of Ghana. I mean, the scientific community of Ghana. We are challenging them to look at cocoa and then distill those compounds in the bean. Because I've read a lot. I'm not a physical scientist, but I've read a lot. And when you look at the composition of cocoa, so many hundreds of compounds, and each of them is unique. Phosphorus, magnesium, all these are very unique. Iron, zinc, and they all play major roles in the body. Antioxidants, for example, cocoa has the highest amongst all food. So if that's the case, my challenge is that the universities, our scientists, should be able to extract, these compounds and come out with full supplements to add value to the raw cocoa beans that we've been exporting. If we can come out, because cocoa has these anti-aging properties, and we are even eating it just at the secondary stage, because the bean is roasted and then ground, and then, the powder, the fat is extracted, and then you pour hot water on it. But if those compounds, those essential compounds in the cocoa can be extracted so that you have supplements, for example. Ghana is producing supplements, food supplements, that when you take, for instance, bone mass, once you have 40, 50, you start having problems with your bones. You walk a little, you are tired. And if you can get supplements, children are anemic, but there's a lot of iron in cocoa. Can we extract that alone as a supplement for people to take? You know, cocoa is able to sort of stimulate the blood vessels to release nitric oxide. And nitric oxide causes dilation of the blood vessels. And then also thins the blood. And that becomes an antiplatelet. That is, it sort of helps in removing all the clotting and then
possible
formation, which is very important. Can we extract that chemical, you know, that brings about dilation of the blood vessels, which is in cocoa? Maybe, you know, you may not find it many for, but it's known that it exists in cocoa. You know, the antioxidant to fight free radicals in the body. Free radical being the source of all our problems, all the killer diseases.
Or even encourage people beyond taking supplements, if the supplements exist, to come to consume cocoa nibs, which is
to consume cocoa as a food. But then, if you also have these supplements, just to add value. Well, a lot of people cannot take my bitter cocoa.
Yes, some people.
And I always say that, you know, there's goodness in that bitterness.
Absolutely.
You know, the bitterness, that's the flannels. So the more you take the flannels into your body, the healthier you look, the younger you look, the more energetic, the vitality is there for you to do anything.
And indeed, you're a very good walking advert for the properties of cocoa yourself and your consumption of dark chocolate, because you look younger than
I think we have to start the conversation here. If you're able to do it here in Ghana, promote the consumption here, process more cocoa for to get cocoa. Even cocoa as cosmetic, that's what I use.
Cocoa butter.
Cocoa butter. That is what I use. I use a combination of cocoa butter and then shea. That's all. I don't use these petroleum, you know, products. You know, and the cocoa, both cocoa and then shea, they have anti-inflammatory properties. Anti-inflammatory. So it means your skin is always fresh. You know, your skin is always fresh. Ladies, please.
The potential of cocoa is great.
Huge.
Indeed, we have a product over there by Nair from Africa next to Honorable Ibrahim Edu, some beautiful cocoa butter soap, chocolate soap, which really will astonish you, I think, if you try that and similar products. Can I ask you, just because we're time is fast spent, I could happily stay here at least another hour and talk with you about cocoa.
I can talk about cocoa. If you give me 1 week, I can sit
I'm
down.
sure, and I would happily listen. But unfortunately, I don't think Asaase Radio on this occasion is going to allow us to, despite our celebration of Cocoa Week. But I wanted to ask you just two quick things in conclusion. So you have done all this work and you are trying to, if you like, change both our perceptions as Ghanaians of cocoa and what cocoa can do. You're also trying to change perceptions in other countries of what their relationship should be with us as a cocoa producing country. What is there left to do? You've been able to introduce the living income differential in partnership. It's an unprecedented partnership. It's like the OPEC of cocoa, as people refer it to. The two countries that produce 65% of the world's cocoa going into partnership to ensure their farmer welfare by the introduction of the living income differential. And indeed, both of you have received the highest national honours of both Cote d'Ivoire. This is your counterpart in the Conseil Café Cacao in Cote d'Ivoire, Ibrahima Yves Kone, and yourself. You've received the highest national order in Cote d'Ivoire, and you've become companions of the Order of the Volta here in Ghana. What next?
I think in the coming years, starting from now, Cocoa's focus is going to be processing to add value. Because we are talking about an industry that is worth more than $100 billion annually. And because we've, for years, been an exporter of, raw primary commodity, we've not been earning much. Out of that 1 billion, Ghana takes just about 1.3, 1.5 billion. The maximum we've taken in this country is around 2 billion annually. So it means that the maximum we've taken is 2%, when our contribution is about 20%, and then we go and take 2%. Now we are not even taking 1.5%. It's a bit ironical. So to break that paradox, there's a need, the urgent need for us to do more processing and add value. The more processing you are doing, one, you add value to enhance, because if you are earning more, then the farmers will be better paid. Then number two, by processing more in Ghana, that will also, open the prospects and then the opportunities for individuals in Ghana to come out with different products.
It will stimulate private enterprise.
Exactly.
But what form do you want Cocoa Bod's encouragement to take? Are you going to take direct stakes in companies? For example, you talk about processing, but CPC, Cocoa Processing Company, as I understand, is a limited liability company. So are you going to have direct ownership of these companies? Are you going to offer capital?
Both. In fact, Cocoa Bod is going to step in directly, because we believe that that direct involvement is critical at the moment. We don't have to just wait for, of course, we are also going to mobilize and coordinate the private sector to come in. So it's going to be a cocktail sort of thing. Cocoa Bod direct, and then also partnering private companies, and then also encourage the private company themselves to go in. Therefore, one thing we've noticed in Ghana is just like cocoa farm. Always, some of our people are very conservative, so they want to see, some examples. And I think these examples should come. And if they should come from Cocoa Bod. I'm saying so because in the medium term, the production of this country will go up, whether you like it or not, because of the various interventions that we are doing. Especially now that we are rehabilitating all those disease farms. Eventually, they are going to be rejuvenated.
This is a big project for this coming year.
It's a huge project. We scaled money, thanks to the president. We scaled money from the African Development Bank. And we started in Sefi. Now we are scaling it across the whole country. Rehabilitating all these disease farms. Remember in 1983 when we had these bushfires, 1983. I quite remember. I was then doing my national service at Wase Kropon, 3rd March 1983, 333. The whole country saw burning all over. It was a Thursday. I know everything.
It's graven on your memory.
Yes. And that's one thing about cocoa. The more cocoa you take,
The better your memory. I think this is the claims of cocoa.
Now to the point. Now, in the medium term, production is going to go up. We cannot continue taking raw cocoa beans to the international market, because it will look like we are going to overproduce and then oversupply, flood the market, and that will collapse everything, and our farmers will be at a disadvantage. We don't want that to happen. But if we are able to put the structures in place, more processing, say that to me in the next 5 years, if we are processing even every cocoa bean produced in the country, oh, hallelujah, it would have been the best thing to happen to this country. And the shells, I've always been saying that the shells, the cocoa shells, once they are removed. They serve as important organic, fertilizer for the farms. Then we can take them back to the farms. And they use the cocoa destined for all manner of things. This month, February, is the month of love. But it's also the month of the heart. The heart month. And between the heart and love, they are very related. So Valentine, that is today, is more or less love. But this month actually is a month for bringing attention to the heart. So February is the month of the heart. The essence of it is just to create awareness and bring attention to cardiovascular health, and also to draw people's attention to the risks related to what happens to that. And one food which actually helps the heart to be very healthy is cocoa. Chocolate. You take your chocolate, cardiovascular problems, you don't have any.
Solved. And finally, very briefly, if you would, despite COVID-19 and the restrictions on gathering that we've had, you've managed to have a very high-profile Ghana National Chocolate Week campaign this year. If nothing else, we've been hearing a lot about cocoa here on Asaase Radio 99.5. How would you like future campaigns to work, or what has been the highlight of this week for you?
I think it's been very wonderful. It's been a success, a huge success. I don't think, the celebration of the National Chocolate Day this week had assumed such a scale before. It's been very fantastic, and we have to take it, to another higher level next year. Bring in the connection with the heart, bring it in, and I want to believe that next year will be even extraordinary than we've seen this year, because the greatest gift that anybody can give you now is how you should, keep your heart healthy. Because, your heart is the epitome of your health. And when you grieve, you grieve from your heart. And when you laugh from your heart. And grief and love, they are two faces of the same coin. Because you grieve because you've lost somebody you treasure very well. That's why you are grieving. See, if you don't love somebody, when that person is gone, you not grieve. So, if that is the case, and this whole thing is coming from the heart, of course there's some communication with the brain, but it's coming from the heart. Then around this time, the greatest thing you can do for your lover is to give that person a gift that will improve that person's heart. Apart from exercising and then eating habits and so on, so cocoa, take your cocoa. So that's why we are saying, give a gift, a gift of chocolate. Because chocolate improves your heart, and then the various blood vessels, improves the health of that. So give as a token, just show that you love that person, because you want that person to improve the health of his or her heart. So it's very imperative that if today you haven't done it, tomorrow
You've been given your deadline, listeners.
No, the point is that February.
Yes.
Is it then
the whole
month is for the heart.
Yes.
It's for heart, and then for love. And you see 14 because it's the middle of February. It's the middle of February.
It's our medium point.
If you haven't done it today, tomorrow is 15. So we are in the middle of February. Don't forget to get chocolate for your child, just to show that you love that person. So you want that person's heart to stay, healthy. That's all. That's the message. It's not just the eating. No. There's message behind that.
The consumption.
It's an emotional sort of thing.
Yeah.
Yes. And we are urging everybody. If you haven't bought chocolate, please, tomorrow, get chocolate for your loved ones, for somebody who's so dear to you. Your wife, your husband, your child, a friend, and let's start the culture of eating chocolate.
A heartfelt message about the heart in the month of the heart and the month of love. From Honourable Joseph Wahim Edu, Chief Executive of Ghana Cocoa Board, thank you so much for joining us on Sunday night here on Asaase Radio. And go out and consume cocoa, go out and consume chocolate. I can completely agree with him on the importance to our hearts. Just saying thanks to all the people who have made this production possible today. Our head of programs, Emmanuel Hemming, Ola Jonah Addo, Abedi Amin, who has been our producer, and I have been your presenter, Mia Mensah, here on Asaase Radio. In case for some reason you were out enjoying the jamboree at Tetequati Interchange so much that you've missed listening to this program and only just caught the last few seconds of it, you can catch the repeat of the program on Tuesday, this coming Tuesday, that's the 16th,